Hello everyone and welcome to part 5 of the Sonic 3D Blast playthrough, and now it's time for Gene Gadget Zone. Continuing on with those alliterations, and I forgot how bitchin' this music is. It sounds really good in this zone. I completely forgot. Whenever I recorded this, usually when I record something, I have my TV down because I want to be able to focus, and sometimes the soundtrack kind of and the music and the sound effects will just kind of distract. So I like to be as laser focused as possible when I record a game. Unless it's something that I need audio cues for, I typically don't do that. So I just sit there in silence with my record button and do what I need to do. This is a neat zone. It's a neat zone. You notice for this part, I go back to just doing one zone. There isn't very much left to do in this game. There's only a couple of zones left. But yeah, I like Gene Gadget Zone here. It's a neat little place. I like the boss battle. Now there's one section in Act 2 that you may see me screw up a couple of times because I'm not a big fan of it. But bear with me, folks. But yes, when I think of the name Gene, there was a coworker I used to have named Gene. He's a pretty cool dude. I've seen him recently, but I used to work with him during my factory days a few years back, and he was pretty cool, but he had a short fuse, and you knew not to mess with him. And of course, my dumbass uncle got a job there one time and ended up getting Gene fired, and I was like, dude, look, you gotta understand, he's a moron, don't worry about it. And hey, it all worked out, because Gene eventually went back to the factory, and then he was working at the old gas station that we all used to hang out at after work last time I seen him. Which, man, that place went downhill after they remodeled it. That gas station used to make some really good pizza, and they used to have these tables in there, these little restaurant tables, and I remember, that used to be the place to go after work. Everybody would be like, hey, you want to go to the one stop and get a za? And I'd be like, alright, yeah, and we'd sit there until sunrise, because we'd work the late shift, and that used to be the place, and then they remodeled it, took all the tables out, made their pizza ass, and it just wasn't worth ever going back. I've only been there maybe 2 or 3 times since, and the last time I ordered a pizza from there, the woman that was at the counter was just really rude about it. She's like, yeah, I hope he gets here and gets his pizza soon, while I was just standing there getting ready to pick up my order. Okay. I wasn't even late. And then I remember another time that when I still had the Monte Carlo, it had this fancy issue going on with the ignition. Something was wrong with the ignition switch, so sometimes the car just wouldn't start. And me and my ex were stuck in the parking lot at the one stop on a really hot July day. And I remember it clearly because she would always start all these fights and just start screaming at me for no reason. And while I was trying to call and get somebody to come help, she was just over there screaming, and everybody on the other end could hear her. I don't think anybody wanted to come help, and I don't blame them. Luckily, that did eventually end, so I no longer have to deal with her or her angry antics. But man, she was angry all the time. I've got stories for days. But what I don't have for days is Gene Gadget Act 1, as that has been completed. And now the majority of the part will probably go toward Act 2. Because of that stupid section I mentioned that it's really easy to get hung up on. But no worries, as I do manage to get through it. But I can recall so many fights that me and my ex got into. Eventually I turned some of my frustrations into a song. It eventually led to my first original song, Said and Done, off the Electric Moses EP. that whole thing was just a mess. It was probably a mistake for both. I'm guilty too. I mean, I was very insecure. I probably didn't need to be with her in the first place. And that whole thing was just a disaster. I'm really surprised we made it work a year. And to date, that is currently my longest relationship for whatever reason. It's like, I don't know if I've ever completely recovered from her. I mean, I'm over her. I just don't know that I've ever completely been the same since. Because it's like been impossible for me to date since. And like, it seemed like it was a lot easier before she was around. Because a lot changed when I did get with her because COVID happened. And then after COVID happened, it's like all the dating apps became garbage and it just became impossible to meet people. Plus, on top of that, I do believe in the so-called loneliness epidemic. And it's just hard to find good people these days. It's hard to find relationships that work and last, and maybe everybody tells me I'll find another worthwhile one of these days, so maybe they're right. But anyways, back to the Gene Gadget here. This is the section that annoys me that I was talking about. There's this stupid maze-like section where if you don't jump on the platforms in time, you just keep falling and going through an endless loop, pretty much. And some of these platforms don't recognize my jumps, and I just end up going through them for some reason. But yeah, this is a section for sure, as you see. Part of me kind of thought about maybe just fast-forwarding through it. But, like I said earlier, sometimes there's gotta be a little bit of slop in a Fromark playthrough. Might as well pad it out a little bit, I guess. I mean, I got one part to go after this. And hey, I only got one flicky left, so eventually I'm gonna get it. Wherever it is. Okay, cool. Here we go, there it is, if I can, there we go. I like those panels there that if you stand too long you get zapped. Definitely want to watch out for those. But yeah, now that I have all the flickies, I can drop back down again. I'm okay with it this time. This time, anyways. Ooh. Ooh, ooh, Anyways. Alright, let's see here. There's a down arrow, but for some reason it launches upwards first. I'm a little bit lost, I think. Okay, never mind, I'm not lost anymore. I must have got lost! All the, like, 2 people who catch all my old song references. If even that. I listen to a lot of old music, okay? I feel like sometimes I'm an old soul. I like old media, I like old games, I like old music. Sometimes, as generic as it sounds, sometimes I do feel like maybe I was born in the wrong era. If I could have been a kid in the 80s, and like, if I could have been a teenager in the 90s during like the pinnacle of classic gaming, that would have been cool. Oh well. At least I can still experience a lot of the classic stuff and appreciate these things. And I had a friend who put it in a really good point of view. He said one time, he was like, you know, when you listen to music that not a lot of other people do, or something that's really old and obscure, you're kind of helping keep it alive. So it's like I'm kind of keeping the music alive by listening to all these things that most people have kind of either forgot about or never heard in the first place. It's kind of a neat way to look at it, if I do say so myself. It's like by playing Sonic 3D Blast and keeping it alive. And I went backwards. Okay. Just gotta get one more flickerino. Thinking about the flickies a bit, though, is making me think more about that cruddy Genesis game. Now, it's not necessarily a bad game, it's just really repetitive. And if I remember right, there's only one song in the entire game, and it's just ear-grating. At least to me. Okay, maybe there's a couple of jingles. There's one that just plays throughout every level. So I've never been particularly good at that game, but I do feel like a playthrough of it is probably due. Same Sonic, as he floats in the air like that. Looks fun. Alright, let's get out of here. It's time for some boss battling goodness. And I do believe, yeah, this is an even number zone, so it'll be time for the, yeah, it's time for the even number boss theme. I like this boss battle. It reminds me of, I can't remember the zone from, it's one of the ones in Sonic CD. It might be Tidal Tempest, or that sounds right. Maybe it's Quartz Quadrant. It's one of those, but it's the conveyor belt, and you gotta basically just run until Eggman's machine grinds itself into the conveyor belt. That's what this kind of reminds me of a little bit. It's similar, but it's not. You gotta look out for these spikes, run up the conveyor belt, wait for them to drop, and just give them a good bonk. Yeah, like that. Although, I would recommend trying to keep your rings. You just gotta bonk him maybe one or two more times. I like this boss battle. It's a nice change of pace from the Volcano Valley boss. It's a lot easier. A lot easier, and it's more manageable, I guess. Let's say I gotta hit him one more time after this. I keep saying that to myself. Is this gonna be the last hit? Oh, bonk. That's the last hit. Sweet. So yeah, folks, that's gonna do it for part 5. And with that, I will see you in the final part.